The year was 1869. Far in the English countryside, nestled between rolling hills and dark forests, lay a small village called Blackthorn. The village was poor, its people hardened by harsh winters and endless toil in the fields. At the very edge of the settlement, away from the main square, stood a lonely building, St. Cecilia's Orphanage. Its bricks were weathered, the paint peeling from its shutters, and ivy crawled like green veins across its walls. To outsiders, it looked like a place of sorrow, but for the children inside, it was the only home they had ever known. Inside, Sister Agnes moved quietly through the halls, a lantern in her hand. She was in her mid-40s, with streaks of silver in her black hair, a stern face softened only by the warmth in her eyes. Though strict, she carried a heart that ached for every abandoned child under her care. That winter, she counted 47 children, each with a story of loss, some orphaned by plague, others abandoned at church steps, a few left by mothers too poor to care for them. Yet within these walls, they found bread, blankets, and on rare days, laughter. Agnes prayed each night, "Lord, keep them safe, for the world has forgotten them." Life inside St. Cecilia's followed a rhythm. At dawn, the children rose to the toll of the chapel bell. They washed in cold water from wooden basins, their breath misting in the chilly air. After a simple breakfast, often just porridge, they sang hymns in the chapel, their voices trembling but earnest. The rest of the day was divided between study, chores, and tending the small vegetable garden. Older children cared for the younger ones. On some evenings, they gathered around the fireplace, telling stories or whispering secrets under thin blankets. There were hardships, of course. Food was often scarce, shoes were patched with scraps, and the roof leaked during storms. But Agnes worked tirelessly to shield them from despair. One evening, as snow pressed against the windows, she knelt before the children in the chapel and said, "You may not have fathers or mothers, but you are not unloved. God remembers the smallest sparrow, and He remembers you too." The children clung to those words like lanterns in the dark. One stormy night, when the wind howled like wolves across the hills, there came a knock at the orphanage door. Agnes, startled, lifted her lantern and opened it to find a stranger. He was tall, wrapped in a heavy cloak drenched with rain. His piercing blue eyes shone in the dim light. "Good evening, madam," he said in a smooth voice. "My name is Professor Jonathan Hale. I was passing through when the storm caught me. Might I find shelter here just for the night?" Agnes hesitated, but the storm was merciless. She allowed him in. Soon, he was seated by the fire, surrounded by curious children. His voice carried warmth as he shared stories, tales of distant lands, hidden kingdoms, and children who discovered magical realms. The children hung on every word. Laughter filled the halls in a way Agnes hadn't heard for months. Though cautious, she felt a strange pull in his presence, as if he carried both comfort and danger in equal measure. After Hale's arrival, strange things began to stir within the orphanage. Little Anna, a girl of 7, tugged at Agnes's sleeve one morning and whispered, "Mother Agnes, I dreamed of a man made of light. He stood at the edge of the woods and called me by name." Another boy, Thomas, claimed he heard soft singing when he closed his eyes at night, a lullaby no one had taught him. Several children swore they saw shadows moving at the window, though the snow outside lay untouched. Agnes dismissed these as childish fancies, but Professor Hale, when asked, simply smiled knowingly. "Children," he said softly, "see what adults have long forgotten. Sometimes the world beyond whispers to them." His words unsettled her, yet the children seemed comforted, as though they trusted him more than her warnings. Disturbed by the children's dreams, Agnes searched the orphanage attic for clues about its past. Dust clung to her skirts as she rummaged through boxes of faded letters and broken toys. Finally, she uncovered a small leather-bound journal, its pages yellow with age. It belonged to Father Corbin, the founder of St. Cecilia's, His entries spoke of early years, struggles with hunger, illness, and grief. But as she read on, Agnes's hands began to tremble. December 1843. 5 children gone. Taken, though the doors were locked. December 1852. Again they vanish. The forest remembers its debt. The final entry ended abruptly with chilling words. The forest comes alive on the solstice. The debt must be paid. Agnes closed the book, her heart pounding. For the first time, she began to fear the orphanage itself. The days grew colder. By December 21st, the orphanage lay buried in snow. The villagers kept to their homes, whispering of omens. Inside, the children grew restless. One evening, Hale gathered them near the fire. "Shall I teach you a song from my travels?" he asked. They nodded eagerly. His voice rose in a haunting lullaby, sweet, yet filled with sorrow. The children repeated after him, their voices weaving into a strange harmony. Agnes entered the room, her face pale. She recognized the tune. It was the same melody described in Father Corbin's journal. She demanded, "Where did you learn this?" Hale only looked at her with calm eyes. "Not all disappearances are tragedies, sister. Some are transformations." Agnes's heart froze. That night, a thick snowstorm covered Blackthorn. The wind howled, rattling the shutters of the orphanage. Agnes lay awake, unable to silence her fears. But when dawn broke, an unnatural stillness gripped the building. She hurried to the dormitories, only to find every bed empty. Blankets lay undisturbed, shoes remained neatly lined by the walls, and the doors were bolted from the inside. All 47 children were gone. Only the faint echo of singing lingered in the halls, the same lullaby Hale had taught. The professor himself had vanished as though he never existed. His cloak, however, lay draped across the chapel altar. Agnes collapsed to her knees, crying out in anguish. When word reached the village, fear erupted. Parents clutched their children tighter, and whispers of witchcraft spread. Crowds stormed the orphanage, demanding answers. "You let the devil take them," one villager shouted, shaking his fist. "They were our blood, and you failed them," cried another. Agnes pleaded through tears. "I swear to you, I know nothing. They were safe when I left them." But when they searched for Hale, they found no trace except his cloak and a torn page of the old journal. The page read, "The children are not lost. They have crossed." The villagers' fury turned to dread. The orphanage, once a place of refuge, was now cursed in their eyes. For weeks, search parties combed the surrounding land. Men carried torches through the forest, dogs sniffed the snow, and divers searched the frozen river. Not a single footprint remained, not a shred of cloth, not even a whisper of where the children had gone. It was as though they had vanished into thin air. At night, villagers claimed to hear faint laughter in the trees. Some swore they saw children in white garments darting between shadows. But when they approached, nothing was there. The village fell into despair. Mothers wept, fathers cursed the heavens, and the name of Blackthorn became a warning to travelers. Months passed. Agnes lived like a ghost within the orphanage. She lit 47 candles every night, whispering each child's name in prayer. Then, one spring evening, a stranger appeared at the gates. He handed her a sealed letter and disappeared before she could ask his name. Her hand shook as she opened it. Inside were only a few words. "They are safe. They were chosen, not stolen. Do not mourn. Prepare." Agnes dropped to her knees, clutching the letter to her chest. Was this comfort or cruelty? Were her children truly alive, or had she fallen victim to some elaborate torment? Her tears stained the page as she whispered, "Lord, what does this mean?" And the mystery of the 47 children only deepened. The disappearance of the 47 children left scars on Blackthorn that would never fully heal. Some villagers wanted the orphanage destroyed, convinced it was cursed ground. They threw stones at its windows and muttered curses as they passed. Others pitied Sister Agnes, believing she too had been a victim of forces beyond her control. Agnes refused to abandon St. Cecilia's. "If they return," she said firmly, "this is the place they will look for me." So, every night she lit 47 candles in the chapel. Their flickering flames danced on the cracked walls, casting the illusion of children gathered around her. She prayed, not for herself, but for them. And though years passed without a sign, her vigil never wavered. Time turned tragedy into legend. Travelers who passed through Blackthorn whispered about the orphanage where children vanished into thin air. They called it the Whispering Orphanage. Some claimed to hear laughter in its halls at night. Others swore they saw pale faces pressed against broken windows. Brave souls who stepped inside sometimes reported a strange comfort, as though invisible hands guided them safely out. The villagers warned them, "It's cursed. Leave it alone." But the story spread, drawing curious wanderers and scholars alike. And so the orphanage, though nearly empty, lived on in whispers and shadows. In 1895, nearly 3 decades later, a young boy named Samuel wandered into Blackthorn. He was thin, ragged, and orphaned by a fire that had consumed his home and family. At night, Samuel dreamed. In those dreams, he saw children dressed in white, laughing in golden fields under a sky that never darkened. They called to him, their voices gentle. One dream guided him, "Come to St. Cecilia's. We are waiting." So Samuel followed the dream. He found the abandoned orphanage, its walls crumbling, its roof sagging with moss. Yet strangely, the chapel within remained untouched, as if time itself had spared it. Samuel entered, lit a candle, and whispered a prayer. The flame flickered, and voices filled the air. The voices grew clearer, weaving into the same lullaby once sung by the vanished children. Drawn outside, Samuel followed the song into the forest. There, under the moonlight, he froze. Before him, children danced and played, their faces alight with joy. They had not aged a day. Anna, a girl of 7, approached him with a radiant smile. "Welcome, Samuel," she whispered. "We've been waiting." He recognized her face from old drawings in the chapel. She had been one of the lost 47s, but how could she still be a child, untouched by time? His heart pounded. He was standing in the presence of the impossible. The children gathered around Samuel, explaining what had happened that night long ago. On the winter solstice, Professor Hale had led them to the forest. He was not a man at all, but a guardian spirit, bound to the land. He offered them a choice: remain in the world of hunger, sorrow, and abandonment, or step into a hidden realm where childhood never ended. They chose to follow him. Anna's eyes glistened as she added, "We are safe here. No hunger, no pain. We wanted to tell Sister Agnes, but the world would not allow us to cross back." Now they extended the same choice to Samuel. Samuel's heart ached. The thought of eternal childhood was tempting. No more loneliness, no more empty nights. But he remembered Sister Agnes, who had kept vigil for decades, lighting candles for children who never returned. "What of her heart?" Samuel asked softly. "You left her broken." Anna's smile faltered. The other children lowered their heads. "We didn't understand then," she whispered. "We thought only of escape. But love demands sacrifice. Perhaps we hurt her in ways we never meant to." Samuel felt tears in his eyes. He knew what he must do. Anna pressed something into Samuel's hand, a golden leaf that shimmered with light. "Take this to her," she said. "Tell her we are safe. Tell her not to grieve. Love is never wasted." As her words faded, so did the vision. Samuel awoke on the chapel floor, the golden leaf still glowing in his palm. It was proof. The children were not gone. They were transformed. He clutched the leaf and whispered, "I'll carry your message." Years passed. Samuel grew into a man, but he never forgot his promise. At last, when Sister Agnes was old and frail, Samuel returned to her bedside. He placed the golden leaf in her trembling hands and whispered Anna's words. They are safe. They were chosen. Love is never wasted. Tears rolled down Agnes's wrinkled cheeks. For the first time in nearly 30 years, her heart knew peace. She smiled through her tears, whispered a prayer of thanks, and closed her eyes for the final time, still holding the leaf. The 47 candles that had burned for decades were finally allowed to go dark. After Agnes's passing, Samuel took it upon himself to restore St. Cecilia's, not as a place of sorrow, but of hope. He opened its doors once more to lost children, telling them stories of the 47, not as a tragedy, but as a tale of transformation. They were never lost, he said to frightened new arrivals. They found a place where love kept them safe. And here, in this house, we will keep love alive too. Slowly, laughter returned to the halls. St. Cecilia's once again became a sanctuary, not haunted, but blessed. The years turned into decades, and Samuel's story spread far beyond Blackthorn. Travelers still came, some swearing they saw children playing in the forest at dusk, their laughter mingling with the wind. To some, the orphanage was still a mystery. To others, it was a place of miracles. But one truth endured: love, even in the face of loss, leaves a light that never fades. The 47 children had not vanished into despair. They had become eternal, symbols of innocence preserved, of hope beyond sorrow. And in the quiet hills of Blackthorn, when the wind whispered through the trees, you could almost hear it still, the song of children, safe forever.